Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. And I'm going to talk today about this program, which is a unique program that was started at the same time that we started our program in human genetics and genetic counseling. And I'd like to go first because it's sort of an interesting and unique perspective on a lot of the careers that some of you might be interested in through genetic counseling. So many of the classes that I'm going to talk about are actually shared between the two programs. When we set out to design this program, it was really to capture how the clinical genomics industry is changing so rapidly and how this is actually changing the field of medicine very rapidly. So if you're interested in personalized or precision medicine, this is definitely the program for you. It's one where we learn how to use the data that's generated on these sequencing projects to help individual patients. It's also a great choice if you're interested in understanding how drugs are developed today. I don't know if you've heard a commercial for any of the newer drugs, but they'll often list a long list of gene names that you have to be tested for before you can be given these drugs. And a lot of drug development now is so focused on a particular variant or mutation to reverse that in the drug development pipeline, there's now a huge role for people with expertise in genetics and genomics. This is also a great choice for people who are interested in how new genetic or genomic tests are developed and marketed. And these could include both clinical tests and things that are direct to consumer, which is becoming a bigger and bigger market every year. And the last big bin we put our field into is using big data to advance health. So whereas personalized or precision medicine is very specific, it's understanding why one person has this one phenotype, we can also use lots of data, sequencing from thousands of people to see how we could help the whole population. And all of these use the skills and knowledge that are in our MSGDA program. So this program is sort of the best of all the programs at KGI, in my opinion. We use the foundational coursework in human genetics. That includes the human genetics, human genomics, medical genetics, all of these courses that are shared with the genetic counseling program. Also, we offer to students the ability to take the cutting edge courses in the applied life sciences that makes KGI unique. These are the core courses that have been a part of KGI for its entire 20 years of existence in really understanding how the life science industry works. And of course, an innovative human genomic curriculum that is offered to our second year students that is really the specific coursework that will prepare every student for an exciting job in the field of genomics and data analytics. The other great feature of this program is because of the sharing of coursework, you get to work side by side with genetic counselors that will be in the field when you start entering the job market. So you'll already have connections with genetic counselors because these are the students you were sitting next to you for a year or 2 years of your life. The same is true of our applied life science students, the Masters of Business and Science, and all those programs that Jason just told you about. You will have classes with them and have friends that go on to fill roles in a variety of different companies. And so again, you're already building your network while you're a student. This also gives you the opportunity to look and have hands-on experience with perhaps technologies or business courses that you wouldn't have thought would be that interesting or useful. But once you really get in there, you realize how important it is to have an understanding how the genomics industry works. And that puts you ahead of other people who are applying for these same jobs. And last, this foundation of genetic and genomic knowledge is going to be coupled with practical data analytics skills. And that is the bioinformatics portion of the curriculum, which will let you translate data into an actionable clinical recommendation that you're going to use to help improve people's lives. So whether that's with research scientists or clinical practitioners, it's a way to translate that knowledge into something actionable. So the structure of the program, let's go back one slide, sorry. There should be an image. We're having issue with one of the slides. I apologize. Go back one. Yep, other way. Okay, let's just wait and see if the image comes up here. While we're waiting for this, if it doesn't work, I apologize. It's a 2-year program, or 21 months. We have 2 years of didactic coursework, meaning you'll be taking classes for 2 years. And there's an internship in the summer, which is a hands-on experience where you will work in either a clinical lab or a industry lab doing something of interest. I guess it's not going to work. So we had a cool little graphic, but when you get the slides later, you'll see it. It's this nice little hexagon. So I'll just talk through here on the list. So the first year is a lot of the core science basics that help set up the more advanced coursework. So you start with human molecular genetics, which is a course that I teach. That is one of the ones shared with the genetic counseling program. You also have the first of the bioinformatics courses, and that's programming for the biosciences. And that is a course that teaches some just computer science basics and also Python. And this course really starts from an introductory level. So if you don't have any prior computing experience, don't worry. This is designed for someone starting as a true beginner. Also this first semester, you'll take genetic disease mechanisms, which is an intro course that really sets up medical genetics and how these concepts that we're learning in molecular genetics actually apply in people. The other courses that you take in the first semester are in the applied life science column, and that's a medical diagnostics course where you really learn what it takes to have a approved test that's offered to patients. You'll also take introduction to the bioscience industries, which gives you a good insight into how industry works as opposed to how educational labs work or academia works. And that's really important because a lot of genomics these days is driven by industry and the companies that are doing groundbreaking research. And so if you want to excel in this field, it's good to have an insight to how these companies operate. You'll also take clinical biostats and a course in ethics. In the second semester, we have a full semester course in human genomics. Again, I teach this class, and I think it's really important to give the genomic perspective right after you get the genetics perspective, because this is the area that's changing so rapidly in our field. Coupled with that course, we also have a lab. In this lab, we do some human sequencing using a nanopore mid-ion sequencer, and we process data. We also use some available data sets from family trios where we learn to call variants and do the pipelines to interpret that data. Also that semester, with the genetic counseling students, you'll take the clinical cancer genomics course, medical genetics, and biochemical genetics. And that is quite in-depth foray into how genetics works from all different aspects of human genetics. The other class that's really foundational in that second semester is the Biomedical Data Systems and Informatics course, which is in the process of being renamed because that's not as informative as it used to be, but it's really a transcriptomics course. And in that course, you learn to get comfortable manipulating genomic data with the R programming language. So in your first year, you'll learn both Python and R, which are the two primary computer science languages. And the last course in the second semester is the clinical trial design and literature evaluation. We are one of the few genetics programs, maybe the only genetics program, housed in a school of pharmacy. And I think it's important that we use that to our advantage and really talk about how clinical trials work, because so much of that is now determined by genomics. So that is the first year of courses. That is a lot of courses. We do expose you to a bunch of information, and then we want you to go out and use it in an internship. We'll talk about the internship in a few slides. In the second year, we have the coursework that we designed just for this program. And that starts in the fall. Right now, we're having our first offering. Of course, this is in our second year of the program, in the DNA sequencing and variant analysis course. And this is a really exciting course focused on the concepts of gene curation and variant curation. So if you've heard of the job of being a variant curator or a variant scientist that interprets this personalized medicine sequencing, this is an entire course just for you. We also have a course in functional genomics, and that course helps to explore some of the cutting edge techniques that are being used to understand how the genome works, and why non-coding variation might be important, and how new research is understanding how the genome is translated into a phenotype. And that course, I also teach a part of it. It's really exciting because it allows me to use some of my research in the classroom. In the second semester, we have a course entitled Genomic Knowledge Translation. And this is really a culmination of everything that you will learn, and then learning how to put this into either a written or a presentation document that can be understood by people who don't have an advanced degree in genomics, and really learning how to take all this knowledge and put it into a final product that can be used by a genetic counselor to explain something to a patient or to a doctor or to an advocacy group, just taking all of these skills and then putting them into a package that can be useful to people without this training. And the last of these specific courses is Genomic Data Visualization and Management. These are big data files that we learn to work with. And so this class is really based on understanding best practices in the industry, how these files are stored with electronic health records, how HIPAA compliance is related to working with sequencing data, and also how we visualize this data. Of course, a sequencing file is over 150 gigs. We can't turn that into one little figure. So this course also teaches us how to represent it in a useful way. During the second semester, you'll also take a two-part series in pharmacogenomics and precision medicine to really understand how, again, variation and genomics is being used to help people get the right amounts of drugs when they have a prescribed pharmaceutical. During the second year, we also have 6 units of capstone each semester, and that's 18 hours of working on a final thesis project. And at the same time, we also have 6 units of electives that get spread across both semesters. We have 3 different concentrations that we have designed for this program. The first is clinical decision support. So this was kind of the first vision of the program when we were thinking about what kind of skills we need to teach people to be variant curators. And so the courses that would satisfy this concentration are really based on understanding disease. One of the first is the embryology class that is taken by the genetic counseling students. Another option would be microbiomics and pathogen genomics. There is an existing course at KGI on the molecular basis of disease, which is very interesting. And then also advanced in vitro diagnostics, because this again relates genotype to phenotype to disease. Another option is the advanced writing course, so for people who are really interested in doing patient reports. And one that's not on this slide that should be there is a machine learning class. We also have an option of medical terminology. In the clinical trial design concentration, this is for students who are really interested in being a part of the clinical development pipeline, which of course is now quite dependent upon genetics and genomics, both for discovery of targets, but also to understand how to do a trial correctly. When a clinical trial is designed, you have to make sure that in both the trial group and the control group that you have equivalent genotypes, so you don't accidentally discover a genetic relationship and not a drug relationship. And so this concentration really uses the best of KGI and the School of Pharmacy and all of the courses that are existing courses built around pharmaceutical discovery and development, and also biotechnology-based therapeutics and the design of clinical trials. For those students who are more interested in assay development and how new products get made, you have an entrepreneurial bent. This is the concentration for you. And here, one of the highlights is the introduction to US food and drug law, which really goes into how you can get something through the FDA to actually market it to patients. The advanced in vitro diagnostics, and again, some of the product development and business operations courses that we have at KGI to understand how we decide if this is a useful test to offer and if a company wants to actually invest money in this. Again, in this one, we also have a couple electives that aren't appearing on this slide. Again, the one in machine learning and one in translational papers. So once you pick a concentration elective, you'll pick 6 units total. I mentioned the summer experience. Everyone has to do a summer internship. We have both genomics labs in academic research centers and at companies that you would apply for an internship. And the goal is that if you enjoy your project and it's an opportunity, we would like you to continue working 2 days a week on that same project as your capstone. If that happens, by the end of year 2, you have both your master's and a year of experience at your project site. Now, if that doesn't work, there are also some projects that you can do at KGI during the 2nd year, and that will give you 2 different experiences, so that's also a good thing. But we are hoping that if you could get a start on the summer project, you could really translate that into a great 2nd year capstone experience. Some of the places where we had students this year were at LabCorp in North Carolina. We had a student in Merck in Boston doing a pharmacogenomics project. We had 2 students at the Scripps Translational Research Institute in La Jolla. And we had a student at the NIH doing a data science internship, and 1 student at St. Jude Hospital working on children's cancer. So I mentioned a few different jobs that we think students would be interested in, but this slide just kind of shows more of the options with the GVA degree. The first is the clinical variant scientist or the variant curator. And this is a new position that's emerging as extremely important in the precision medicine future that's coming very quickly into our healthcare system. There are companies that do this as a service. Some of them are listed on the screen, like Fulgent, Counsel, Color. Other ones you may have heard of are Ambry or Invitae. You also have in-house teams at large hospital systems like Kaiser or Children's Hospital of LA. The thing that makes this career really appealing to a lot of people is the fact that you can work remotely with a flexible schedule. So if you've always wanted a job that you could do in your pajamas, this is for you. The role involves taking variants that are found through DNA sequencing and trying to decide if it could explain the phenotypes that are seen in that patient. And so the more people get sequenced, the more variants have to be analyzed. And so this is a job field that is expanding very rapidly. There are also genomic data analyst roles that aren't focused on individual patient reports. And these are people who would work for large research groups or hospitals Or perhaps you'd be part of a team that's trying to understand all of the variants involved in, let's say, cardiovascular disease. So it's a very focused project where you might only work with a small subset of patients, and you're really directed towards looking for a particular kind of genomic data. The next option is to work for either a biotech or pharmaceutical company on product development. And so these are, again, designing new assays. A lot of people still don't get whole genome sequencing or whole exome sequencing. The gene panel is still the cheapest way to do sequencing projects. So helping to decide what genes should be on a new sequencing panel is very important. Again, once we have identified mutations that are associated with particular diseases, of course, that makes them a drug target. So trying to help drug development scientists figure out which targets they should go after is the role of a genomic analyst. And then in the clinical trial, actually making sure that when they separate the participants in either the control group or the testing group, that you have an equal amount of particular DNA variants in each group. So you're not actually testing the genetics, you're testing the drug. And the last is to work for a DNA sequencing company who provide add-on services. So QIAGEN, GeneWiz, Illumina, they all offer sequencing. But for a few extra dollars, you can get everything interpreted as part of your initial sample cost. And so these companies are really ramping up their services in analyzing the data, either as a group, if you get, say, 100 samples from, let's say you're doing a cancer study, you could analyze it as a whole, or again, individual patient data. Another job option that's open to graduates of MSGDA would be the more classical position of working in an academic research lab. Perhaps you would be working with a specific disease that you're interested in or a particular patient population, but anyone with these skills that have both the understanding of the genetics and an understanding of how to manipulate the data would be a great asset to any research group where you'd be sort of the nexus of doing the data interpretation for the other scientists working on the question. And last, of course, are the emerging careers that we haven't yet thought of. A lot of this is direct-to-consumer oriented. Of course, the genetic ancestry companies have lots of roles for analysts in trying to understand the data that their clients send them. There's also a burgeoning field in health and wellness consulting using genomics. So not only using genomics when people get sick, but when they're healthy to try to match them up with the right kind of screening and the right kind of diet and other practices that will preserve health as opposed to react to disease. And then being a resource for people who are following up on their consumer genomics data. I know lots of people who have done 23andMe and they get the report and they were hoping for more, they don't know what it means. And so this is an opportunity for people to make new add-on products or offer follow-up services after these kind of tests. And again, the career options in this field are exploding. The estimate is that jobs would grow around 30% in this area. And we have no idea what's going to be right over the horizon just because things are changing so fast. And there's so many new technologies that have so much promise that are just a few years away from going into the healthcare setting. And as soon as a new test is launched, of course, you need lots of people to interpret that data. So why should you do this program? Of course, I happen to like it because it's something that we designed from scratch. It's a unique program. It's the first of its kind. And it really has been built around what we get from the genomics industry. When we were designing the curriculum, we talked to lots of CEOs, lots of people working in the field, what would be the ideal dream curriculum, and we just built it. So this will really set you up for the future of the genomics industry. Again, you get to work alongside genetic counseling students and bioscience industry students at KGI to begin building your network of colleagues, especially if a large group stay in California. You're already going to know people that you can pick up the phone and call when you have a question. And last, it captures the best of KGI, the strong focus on connection to the industry, but also an equal amount of science. Okay. And we do have one question about the proportion of clinical variant scientists that require a PhD versus master's students. And that's a great question. A lot of job descriptions will say PhD or Master of Science in Genetic Counseling required, but the people doing this role have a variety of degrees, especially if you can articulate that you have all of this genetics background, but also the interpretation and bioinformatics skills. We anticipate that our students are going to be very competitive for these roles. And we definitely have some of our existing second-year class that are going to be applying for these positions. And so we will keep you posted on their success rate in getting these very exciting jobs. The thing we are emphasizing is that we have this specific coursework in variant interpretation that really is the first class that I know of that is a full semester-long course on how to do this particular skill. Do you want me to answer the other two questions? So I have another question here about can people take classes from the genetic counseling program to the GDA program? And unfortunately, because we are so intense with the coursework, you get your money's worth by signing up for these programs because they are so heavy with units. It is not possible to take extra classes. And that leads us into the dual degree option. It's something we have talked about, but is not currently offered at this time to have a 3-year combined degree. But stay tuned for that because we do know that these courses are of interest to genetic counseling students and also working genetic counselors. But at this current time, in order to take the variant science and the programming for biosciences, you do have to be enrolled in the GDA program.
And there's another question, can students apply to both programs? If so, is doing so ill-advised? So yes, a student can apply to both programs. There are 2 different processes for admissions. So acceptance to one program doesn't guarantee acceptance to the other. If you apply to both programs, there would be independent decisions for each program. And you can actually apply to one program and be considered for both programs. So if you are interested in applying to both, definitely reach out to admissions for more details on that process.